Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 285. Look who's back. It's Jordan Tyrer. How are we doing?
Good, thanks. How are you? Good, thanks.
I'm good, thank you, mate. We're days from seeing each other, actually, weren't we?
Yeah, not long since West Brom. Yeah, we was well, you went down, I went up, met in the middle.
Exactly. Things all right down there?
Yeah, all good. All good. As you can see, I've got all the badges in. Yeah, sat in the physical performance hub, getting it going. So yeah, it's a nice quiet period in the afternoon. So why not record us chatting a lot of nonsense about sports science and lots else.
That's it. Well, the feedback on the previous episodes, which we thought were going to not be great, has actually been okay. So we thought we'd jump on today, and our plan is we have no plan, and we're just gonna we're gonna have a bit of a catch up, and just about some of the recent events, because there was obviously the Colchester event that you ran,
Yeah.
Everton event which I ran, and then we were both at West Brom. So we covered quite a few different people, speaking to different coaches from different clubs, quite a few different presenters as well. So we thought we'd have a little catch up on it. So let's start chronologically, which was back at Colchester,
Yep.
which we started with a couple of speakers, then up before, didn't we?
Yeah. No, it was one of that kind of organically grew, and it was really it was really good actually. I think yeah, first event I'd ran by myself, but yeah, it ran really smoothly. Now, fortunately, Hayden Clifton, who's head of medical and sports science at Colchester, he presented and he kind of obviously got in touch with us in the first place about hosting the event. Now, I know Hayden from Lincoln City days, so he was brilliant help in getting everything kind of sorted from their side of things. So that really helped. But yeah, we had him present on a hamstring strain kind of case study. We then had two like a real nice change up from what we usually have at networks with two kind of experts in their fields, one on ankle injury and one on ACL reconstruction and rehab. And then we finished off with Dave Carolan, who few of you may have heard of. But I think over the four of them, it was great because the difference we had, so Dave spoke a lot around kind of lessons from his career, and he's been in the game a long time, and actually sharing some golden knowledge. Like anyone who's young in their career, young practitioners, they have to watch his presentation. Genuinely, knowledge bombs getting dropped from someone who's been there and done it pretty much on everything that you can in sports science. So had that to finish off the evening, which was amazing. And then in between Hayden and Dave, we had two medical experts. So in terms of who was in the room, it was amazing because we had young sports scientists and S&C coaches, older, more experienced sports scientists and S&C coaches. Then we had physios, we had people from medical backgrounds, and actually just to draw off people's expertise and experiences across all formats was great actually. So I drove away from there absolutely buzzing. The M25 nearly just delayed the whole thing, trying to get across there as it always does. But driving back, I was absolutely buzzing because I was thinking, what an amazing event. And lots and lots of knowledge shared from different walks of life, which I was thinking I was a little bit jealous, to be honest, because I was thinking, if I was a young practitioner or still at uni or, I'm trying to find roles in football now and I've just gone to that event, I've just been gifted so much knowledge, that wasn't really available, maybe a couple of years ago sort of thing in terms of before these events started. And I think way back when to the first event, football fitness event I went to back when in Salford, in the tiny little hotel room that it was, very, very different. So yeah, 40 plus people there in the end. It was really at max capacity for the room. It was a fantastic event, and yeah, really, really nice to see that we haven't been to the Southeast in a long time. And Hayden was buzzing, Colchester staff were all buzzing. They're happy they really want us to come back again and make it a regular thing. So hopefully any more, in the future, any more Southeast clubs, if they want to get involved, if they want to host, if they want to do anything like that, like we'll be going back that way because it was such a good event. So yeah, eyes peeled and keep your heads up for that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's really nice to go to a part of the country that probably kind of gets forgotten about quite a bit, doesn't it, in terms of events? So when we were putting it on, we didn't quite know who was going to come, whether the timing was going to be right, but it was so nice to see so many different clubs represented as well from that area. And obviously with it being there, coaches have to make a real effort to come because nothing's down the road, is it?
Yeah.
Like it's all a decent trek away. So it was really good to see that.
Yeah.
I know we'll cover some of the stuff that Dave spoke about in a little bit as well, because we'll link that into some of the other presentations. But no, I think just to echo that, like in terms of the expertise from the surgeons, the guys that ended up presenting for us, I think that's the whole point of these events, isn't it? We get a lot of people asking questions on who are the events for. And I think a lot of people think it's for sports science, it's strength conditioning coaches, which it is. But if we can get different perspectives, we had nutritionists at the last one, and we've had technical coaches, we have had some players in the past as well, physios. I think getting perspectives of all different roles, it all helps because they're all part of an MDT, and understanding different viewpoints and different ways of working is really important. So yeah, that was really nice as well. And I know getting those guys to present, it brought a slightly different crowd in as well, which is also great to see.
Yeah. I think people who hadn't, so it was Mark Bowditch and Tim Williams, who were the kind of medical experts, if you want to call them that presented, and they, like I say, they were experts in their field and brought people in who wanted to see them present. And then in doing that, it opened their eyes to what we're all about, and Football Fitness Federation is all about, and trying to spread the word in sports science, physio, nutrition, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, again, like you hit it on the head, we're an MDT team essentially, when it comes down to working with players and getting the best out of players. So you need an MDT approach. So you're going to need MDT heads in the room. And that was a strength. That was why it was really, really good. And as were the later ones that we're going to cover in a sec. So yeah, positive.
I think just to tie that into a bit of a bigger picture, which is something we speak about a lot, and on improving the value of what sports scientists and strength conditioning coaches are doing. Some doing, well, majority doing incredible jobs, but probably not getting the exposure and the value in a lot of places of what they deserve.
Yeah.
And I think if we can help that through getting different practitioners in the room and show some of the work and the understanding that goes on, hopefully that'll help towards that as well. I think that's sort of bigger picture for us, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So that was Colchester. We then went on to Everton.
Yep.
With the Everton event, that's been running the last few years, and we tie it in after the alumni event for John Moores. So obviously, if you look through the list of people that have been on the podcast, there's probably about 50% of them that have actually been through the John Moores program.
Quite a few,
yeah, there's a hell of a lot. And that was just something I actually spoke directly to John at Everton, and because I've asked the question before on the podcast a few times to people that have been through the program to say, like, what is the difference? Because people go on internships, they go through good degree pathways and even masters, but this program seems to produce a hell of a lot of coaches that go on and have long careers as well and successful careers. And there's a lot now that are in some top jobs as well. So I sort of said to John, like, what's the difference? Like, how is it so successful? And there was a few, and also Dave Flower as well was there. And the feedback was that, one, because they feel like they give them real life experiences. So they're not just filling water bottles or protein shakes and all the rest of it. They're actually getting their hands dirty in terms of actually coaching. So that was a big part. But the other thing that sort of stuck in my mind was that they say they're looking to pick people to get on the internship. So you can't just rock up and just put your name forward and get accepted onto it. You've got to impress. And it's something I spoke with one of the young coaches actually at the West Brom event, who was talking about some of the experiences that he was picking up at the minute. And I was underlying that fact to say that you probably think that this isn't that worthwhile at the minute, working with a part-time amateur team. But if you then approach a program like what John runs at a club like Everton, and you've got a CV that includes X, Y, and Z roles where you've picked up X, Y, and Z experiences, then that could make you stand up above people that haven't got that.
Yeah.
And that really showed. So there's the experience side, but there's also how they operate. like how they introduce themselves, how they act, how professional are you? Like if you're not thinking about those things in terms of general behaviors and how you're communicating with people, what you're putting out on social media, which I know we've talked about before, that needs to be considered as well. Because if you then approach a club like Everton to get on an internship and they see that you're not that professional and all the rest of it, that you're just going to get overlooked.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but some really important takeaways from that. We've not even talked about the presentation and stuff yet, but that was some of the initial stuff from the actual alumni event and that program at John Moores.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head again with young practitioners. You don't realise how, like I say, valuable experiences that you might think, oh, I'm not working with the first team here. That sat, I'm not sat on the bench of the Premier League team, away at Old Trafford or Anfield or the Etihad. That's not going to happen in the first year of your career. But I know for a fact I landed my Southampton placement way back in 2014 because I've been working grassroots, literally managing grassroots under 12s teams in and around the Leeds area, and tried to get a few coaching badges and got an S&C qualification. And I was, with very limited knowledge, just trying to do some kind of dare I say it, I was using ladders and things, trying to get these under 12s grassroots players a little bit faster and with better coordination and the footwork, and just because I just had a really loose, rough, terrible, probably approach to it, but I was trying to implement some sort of, speed, agility, whatever development that people at Southampton went, actually, I can see you've already engaged in the process. You're trying to do that. So the exact same thing what you said there. Anyone in and around, that early part of their career, trying to gain experiences, trying to get these internship placements, opportunities, whatever it is, doesn't matter how big or small the team is you're working with, if you can show that you are engaging with the process and trying to implement, strategies to help develop players, those clubs, and it's the same when I was at Bournemouth and we were looking at placement students coming in and stuff, it was the exact same thing. Are they showing initiative to try and help improve players? Yes, they are. They're probably going to be quite a good fit then. No, they're not. They're not for us. And it's as simple as that at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that's very good lessons for any young practitioner. Just engage in the process as early as you can.
I think if you think about what they're coming out with as well, so if they come out with a professional way of operating around professional people with a load of experience with different age groups as well, because I know that's one thing that they do is they put you get experience across age groups, so you're not just working with one age, you come out with that experience as well. It's putting you in a pretty good position, isn't it, to go and get something. And if you can add layers on top of that as well, then that's what you've got to do now. I know we'll probably speak about it in a little bit in terms of impact of sports science. And also I know we spoke about it in the recent event in terms of what is required now for people to go into jobs in terms of qualifications. And that's only going to probably increase the next few years, isn't it? Like years ago, it might have been just a degree. Then it was a degree and a UKSCA, and then you've got your masters, and there's just layers on top of it. I think that is probably going to, I know Barry mentioned it, didn't he, in terms of people having PhDs at one point. But you can't overlook that experience either, can you? Like that's got to be really focused on and picked up where you can.
Yeah, we all know the book smart person, that's got all the all the degrees, all the qualifications. I remember some of my master's degree that gave you unbelievable information on optimum joint angles for certain lifts and things like this, and then you actually watch them try and coach, and they were terrible. And it was like, so yeah, all the gear, no idea is a very valid saying in this instance, because that just experience of coaching and being chucked in the deep end with different age groups. Can you work with a group of under 9s who are just running around trying to pick the nose, or can you work with under 18s, under 23s who are trying to get a contract or might already been released and are just there just because they've got to fulfill their contract and are looking for another club? How do you motivate them? How do you work with those players then? Go and show us your experience. But if you've already got experience of being in and around those different age groups, it personally, the degrees, the qualifications are obviously very important. It shows competency. You'd need that in your role, but it's the experience which is going to land you the best roles. It's the experience which is going to get you ahead of other people. It's the experience which is going to get you going up the career pathway at the end of the day, because that's what you draw upon when you're in your roles. So yeah, experience for me will always trump qualifications, and it should always do, to be honest. But yeah, I think Barry's point on PhDs is very valid. It is going to only increase, but this is where practitioners, and Dave spoke about, and we'll speak about that again, you've got to make sure you're maintaining all those different parts of your profile, if you want to call it that your qualifications are ticking over, great, but also is your experience ticking over? Are you getting different experiences? All that sort of stuff. So yeah, very valid points.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I know you've underlined the importance of people going and watching the Colchester events, and it sounds like we're just trying to sell these presentations to people.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, from these last 3 events, which we'll cover obviously the West Brom ones in a little bit, there's been an incredible amount of information that's going to be available to everyone on the community. And I'll just tie in James Conboy's event. So James is a sports scientist at Aston Villa with the academy. He actually spoke at the previous alumni event for Everton. So I saw him present there, and obviously he came on the podcast as well. But his presentation around analysing your coaching practice and some of the work that he's done on that regardless of what stage you're at of your career, whether you're a super experienced coach or whether you're just starting out, that is so valuable, because you're not getting assessed on it. It's not for UKSCA or a basis or anything like that, but simply recording yourself and miking yourself up and listening and watching what you're doing within a coaching session is absolutely, I just think it's so valuable for people. James also breaks it down then in terms of how he feeds back to players, some of the language he uses and things like that as well. So if you listen to that one as well, like, that's going to give you a hell of it's just another layer to your coaching practice. And especially if you carry out something similar to what he did, it'll just improve it massively. The other one, which we can touch on now, which will tie into what Dave spoke about, is James Malone, who's a senior lecturer at Liverpool Hope, has worked in football before as well, and he's also a mentor now. So James is doing mentoring with, he's got coaches around the world, some that have been on the podcast reasonably recently as well. And he spoke about the importance of having a mentor. And we just spoke about it just before we hit record on what that actually means, how beneficial is it, and what it looks like, and who needs one. And we sort of spoke about it. There's official and unofficial mentorships, I think, isn't there?
Yeah.
And we've probably all got experience on both.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, exactly that. Some people don't realize that they've actually got a mentor when they actually have. Because you just think, don't you? You just go, I need to pay for a mentorship, or I need to get on a mentorship program. They don't realize, like you said before we recorded, actually just having a sit down and a coffee with somebody regularly, all of a sudden, when you actually reflect on it and you think about it, you go, actually, that is a bit of a mentorship. So yeah, I wasn't at that event, but I've seen it back and things like that. And mentorship looks very different to different people. Dave obviously spoke about it in his presentation at Colchester as well. And Dave runs his own sort of mentorship in kind of his, I think he calls them the commute catch-ups or whatever, when he's in the car and just a little phone call. It's just, it can be as effective as that and simple as that, and it still has a really positive value to that person. And it's cracking that Dave's offering, his mentorship or his views and advice, given the fact, the career he's had. So, but then he made a great point that, if you're early on in your career, a student still, maybe you've landed your first role or whatever, you might not be able to afford to get on an official top end mentorship that everyone's trying to chase. So, maybe don't break the bank in order to do that. You can still find mentorships in other ways. Obviously, some of them are fantastic, but just reach out to somebody who maybe a little bit more senior, or somebody who's been through the process, who they don't mind giving a bit of advice. That's still mentoring at the end of the day. And I think if everybody in sports science, S&C, physio, nutrition, technical coaches, whatever, if they actually think back throughout their career, they will probably realize they have had mentors at some point when they probably didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
Even not non-official. Obviously, some people have official mentors. Some people, I guarantee, a lot of people will have had unofficial mentors, and it's just putting that name on it, isn't it? It doesn't need to be that. Just somebody like who can just bounce ideas off and actually go, well, from my experience, this worked for me. This didn't work for me. Give it a go in your own practice and see what happens. And lo and behold, that is mentoring at the end of the day. So, yeah, I think very powerful, important, and it's a big part of it now. And I think, like you said before we went on air, a lot of it's come from personal training world. And way back when I was doing a little bit of personal training alongside trying to work with semi-pro athletes and pro athletes and try and generate business and things like that, I actually realized I was much more experienced and better working with athletes. But when it came to the personal training side of things and people who just wanted to maybe just general population who wanted to lose a bit of weight, get a bit fitter, get a bit stronger, I hadn't got much experience with that. And there is differences. So I had a mentor for that side of things. And actually, the more you look at it, you broke it down, you went, oh, actually, they're part and parcel of pretty much the same thing. And I think that's where personal training has been around for a lot longer than sports science has, that you can actually see the similarities between them. But that's where now we're getting proper sports science, S&C physio mentors that are providing some really, really good value to the community of performance scientists, if you want to call us all that under one bracket. So yeah, very, very valuable. Yeah, very valuable.
I think that obviously the debate comes around sort of pricing. And like you mentioned, young coaches, if you're suddenly quoting big sums of money in their eyes at that stage of the career, then it's going to be something that either they can't do or they choose not to do. I think a point that James made actually was the figure around what it costs now to become like a fully qualified sports scientist. And there's probably cost missing within it as well. But I think he quoted about 45K. That's in terms of like your degree, your masters, your UKSCA, and all the rest of it as well. And he does a brilliant job again of breaking it all down. But I think just to tie in the importance of a mentorship on something like that is, one, can they advise on, I don't necessarily think ways of saving money through that, because a lot of the time you're going to have to pay it in some, and it's not going to be a bill that you're just going to get at 45K. It's going to be accumulated over time. But is there a strategy that they've learned throughout their career on when to do certain things at the right time, alongside maybe a growth in your salary and all the rest of it? And then just in terms of the realities of getting into a full-time job in football, and if it is something that you're looking to pursue and go through that and spend that money and then come out the other side in a role that you're working towards, at least you've had someone like James or others in a position that have experienced it and they can feed back. And I think that's the important thing, is that if you get the right mentor, because obviously at the moment, the people I can think of that are running mentorships, like James Malone, Shane Murphy's got a mentorship as well. We got an insight into that over in Dublin. They're running them right. Like they're running them in a way that they can give their experiences, but they're also giving a hell of a lot of education with it as well. And for me, it's super, super valuable. I'm not going to tell people that you have to spend that money, but you're going to get a hell of a lot of value out of it. The issue is going to come, and it probably is like this already, if you've got some people that are just trying to set up for the sake of trying to make some money, then there are going to be people like that. Because like you mentioned, in the personal training world, it's so big, that area now, that you could spend the same amount of people with two people, same amount of money with two people, and get very, very different experiences. So I think it's just important. And hopefully we're a network that you can reach out to ask advice. If you're looking to go onto a mentorship, we can hopefully point you in the right direction of someone that we know is good and we trust. But yeah, I think that's the sort of next stage of it, that we got to watch out for these, whatever we're going to call them, that are going to just trying to make a quick buck out of it, which there probably will be.
Yeah, no, it does. But again, it just comes down to do your research.
Yeah.
Before you commit to anything in life, do your research on it. And I think that's a powerful point. The beauty of Football Fitness Federation and our network and our community and everything is we know a lot of people now, and it's quite a big community.
Yeah.
So there will be countless people who are part of the community or the network, or people who we just know who are on mentorships. And like you say, we can hopefully guide you towards some good ones. So yeah, if you are interested, I think that would be a very good point to take away. Reach out if you're trying to find a bit more, and
Yeah.
certainly we can help in that regard.
Yeah, because I know Dave mentioned it about around the pricing. And it's always one of those with any sort of mentorship, isn't it? If you pay, say you're paying £1,000, but then he puts you in a position where you can be making more than that over time, is that worth it? Or does it save you maybe a year or two on your career from getting that feedback from someone? Like you've got to have some sort of impact back, haven't you?
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just spending cash for the sake of it. So
yeah.
I get that point of view completely, because I think that there's going to be people out there like that. But I think if you spend it with someone that's worth spending it with, then it's going to give you a hell of a lot of good information.
Yeah, no, definitely agreed.
So that was there anything else at Everton? Again, we had quite a few clubs represented from the Northwest, which was nice to see. So yeah, there's been a good few spread in these last few events.
Yeah,
And obviously,
we've seen a lot of, if you think about across the 3 events, Colchester, Everton, and West Brom, and there are a lot of different faces and a lot of different clubs and a lot of different backgrounds. So again, if you're able to get to these events, for anyone who's not been before and they might be hearing about them and wonder or not, again, it comes down to network at the end of the day. Like these are opportunities to get in front of people. Certainly, again, I can't understand, but if you're a young practitioner, just get yourself to these events, because you literally get put in front of people who might be really senior at clubs, and it's just a face to a name sort of thing. And when you apply for a placement, oh yeah, I saw you at a football fitness event. Yeah, go on, I'll give you a chance. Like it's a no-brainer. So yeah, if you're still wondering and you're still like, oh, shall I go to an event? Just go to an event. And there was somebody actually at the West Brom event who she lives in Colchester, so she was actually going to try, but she couldn't do it in the end. She was actually going to go to the Colchester one, and then she went to the West Brom one. So that would have been, I think, the record for the biggest
distance between the two.
Between the two within a short time. But unfortunately, yeah, she couldn't make the Colchester one, but she did get to West Brom, so it was good to see her anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, another conversation I had at West Brom, just to tie the West Brom event in, again with the young coach that I mentioned before, was they were speaking about like their next experience or next internship or whatever it's going to be. And I turned around and I said, well, Tom over there is the head of sports academy sports science at West Brom. And he was like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, and that person's in that role at this club. So you're in a room, like you say, it's not just the presenters, and that's the power of it. Like it's not just the people in front of you. They're obviously going to be beneficial to speak to.
Yeah.
But it's the other people within the room. And that's why we do the breakout tasks where you can go around and speak to people, because that's where you create the network. And I know we've had numerous times where people have utilized those relationships and gone on to either have someone that's in their network they can reach out to and ask questions to, or it's led to opportunities as well, which is obviously the key, which is what we want to happen more often.
Yeah.
But yeah, on to the West Brom one. So we had Angela Jackson, who's a consultant youth physio. And we also had Barry Druss, who's a professor at the University of Birmingham. 2 very, very different presentations. But I think, again, obviously Angela's was more focused on the physio side of things and rehabilitation, but Barry's for coaches and careers, and he spoke around the impact of sports science as well, which got me thinking, I know you're probably the same, like a lot of the things he's saying, you're like, wow, we've got to look at this, and it's got to be something we probably speak about quite a bit. So yeah, what were your key takeaways from it, from the 2?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I loved Angela's, because my background and predominantly being an academy footballer, and I've spent a lot of time looking at growth and maturation, and Angela's an expert on that. She was talking about skeletal age and maturity of athletes, certainly looking at like pars fractures, which is, anyone who's worked in academy knows they are real headaches, overload stress fractures in lower back, that they are costly injuries to our athletes. So when she was talking about skeletal age and actually how late players fully mature to, skeletally, that's the word. And how we're looking at, how the maturation process affects things and injuries. And I was like, yes, this is fantastic. And literally I was watching it and I was thinking, I know 3 or 4 physios at clubs that, straight away I'm going to be on the phone to him about, you need to get either Angela down to present as a CPD for maybe the younger work placements, the medical, placement students, or just the newer kind of younger practitioners at those clubs, or like at least watch the presentation, go on the community, watch the presentation later, because this is fantastic. I know of pars fractures that are happening at clubs right now in certain players. Could a little bit of advice that Angela's giving here, could that help that player get back a little bit faster than maybe already the current pathway that player's on? So yeah, Angela's was fantastic. Like I say, from a selfish point of view, I'm biased. I love the growth and maturation stuff, obviously with what we spoke about with Sean coming on the previous podcast and stuff like that as well. That was fun. Yeah, loads takeaways from that. But then going on to Barry's again, yeah, very, very different, very overview of sports science in general and the industry, how it's grown from his, first taste of kind of club football back in the 90s to where it is now, what things have changed. I think some of the most powerful points were, like his views on how sports science has changed, but some of the Q&As after, from some of the people in the room were fantastic. They really sparked some great conversations and some potentially quite controversial ones, but it's great to get, experts and, a professor at a leading university giving their views on certain things. And it was fantastic. I think the question which really stuck with me was to Barry, and it was, what in his opinion is the most overrated thing in sports science, and what's the most underrated thing in sports science. And
Get ready to lose listeners. Get ready to lose listeners.
Yeah,
go on, John. What was it?
Rather controversially, for like I say, a professor at an academic at a top university, he said the most overrated thing is research. Which I think a few people went, and I think hopefully a few people listening to the podcast went, and he explained it really, really well. Because the reference he gave was sleep. I think we all agree sleep is incredibly important in athletes and just in general health.
Yeah.
But he said, in terms of a lot of the research and how a lot of it's being carried out, now not all research, but a lot of research, they're taking people who have a chronic exposure to a lot of sleep, 8-9 hours a night, and then all of a sudden they're cutting them down to 2-3 hours and then testing how the performance is. Now, anyone can tell you their performance is going to be crap.
Yeah.
3 hours of sleep when you're used to getting 8 or 9. And he made a great point about when kids come along. Now I haven't got kids yet, but I've got a dog that likes to get up all hours of the night and sometimes wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we've had him less than a year. And the point he made is when his son came along, all of a sudden his sleep patterns got affected. And actually after a while, you got used to it and you adapted. Now I'm pretty sure of all the athletes out there, a lot of them have got kids. A lot of them have got, things which are going to keep them up. A lot of them have night games and they can't sleep very well, but they get accustomed to being able to, get on through not that good sleep sometimes, and they can still perform at the highest level. So his point was that the research gives us a snapshot, and sometimes we're getting a little bit caught up on just what the research says. And I followed up with a little question on, do you think now that we're losing a little bit of our ability to innovate as practitioners in sports science and the wider performance world, because we're so focused on the research? Because there's more research than ever before. He went back, 20 odd years ago, no one really knew what was going on. Sports science wasn't really a thing. So they were trying things out. They were being really innovative. Now we've got, 30 years worth of experience from that point, give or take. And, all of a sudden it's like, are we actually losing our innovation a little bit because we're going, well, the research says this, so I can't try anything else. And I use the example of Nordics, the research is suggesting that, we love Nordics. They're really good, reduce hamstring injuries. But the research says there's a certain, sets and reps you should follow. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't condone this, but, I wouldn't say, right, I'm going to go off and do one set of 30 Nordics with a player. I wouldn't actually do that, but just to have that innovation and think, well, actually, should we try that? You never know. If someone's brave, go and try it. Certainly don't try it in a Saturday, Tuesday game week. But, just that, because the research says we need to follow these sets reps and we just follow those sets reps, do we actually then lose our ability to go, well, hang on, what happens if we tweak that? And rather than doing, say, 3 sets of 6 or 3 threes in the early stage and then we build it to 3 5s, what if we actually went 1 set of 10 and then had when they had a good couple of days rest, so there wasn't any DOMs or anything like that, and see what the difference is. And then, this is where research and innovation, helps and leads to progress. And I think that was his point around, is the research actually kind of holding us back a little bit from being a little bit more inventive and actually being able to take a few steps forward in terms of the industry. So yeah, that was a bit, to hear a professor saying actually research is a little bit overrated at times. It's like, whoa, here we go. So that was almost worth it, just for that really. But that was a really big takeaway for me, and I think I agree with it. I do agree with it, because you do have to try things to sometimes learn, but you got to do it in a safe way. I get that, but yeah, very interesting, very, very interesting. What about you?
I think you've done a great job in terms of giving the context after that first statement, which maybe shocked people a little bit, because obviously that's really important. I think just on that point, we've probably, if you've got a reasonable amount of experience under your belt, there's probably, everyone can relate to a point where you've not gone against the research, but maybe you've trialed things and just kept things within a program and thought, actually, there's something in this, even if the research doesn't say it right now. And then what tends to happen is eventually the research might catch up. So you've had something in your program for a while, then a paper comes out and says, whatever it is improves whatever it is. And you're like, well, actually, I've been doing that for a while. And it's sort of justifying it. But the fact, if you strictly stick to what's out at the time of programming and working with people, we are going to lose that element of innovation. And just obviously, I know that it's contextual within the point that you're making, but it ties back in with the environment, doesn't it? Because if you're in an environment where you can try new things and you can be quite innovative, then that's great. But there are going to be examples of times where you probably do play it quite safe within certain roles at certain clubs that are in certain title races at certain times of the season. Yeah. That's probably when you've got to draw things right back and go, right, stick to the research. If I get questioned on things, I can refer to research, and you're not in an environment where you can be innovative. Not at that point anyway. But I think that's sort of big picture on where are you at and how flexible can you be. I know there's certain clubs and organizations where coaches probably are quite frustrated in the fact that they want to be innovative and they want to try different things and maybe take slightly different approaches, and they can't, just because it's a certain club paying certain millions of pounds for players, and you've got to literally justify everything you're doing with research. So I think it is a really interesting point from Barry, because I completely get it. And like he'll know, it all depends on environment and where people are at. But again, sort of tying into the point that we mentioned before about picking up experiences, that's where it's so valuable. If you're in a position now where you've got free reign, you can try different things. Yeah, use the research to guide your practice, but use a little bit of common sense and pick up some different viewpoints, speak to different people, and see if there's things that you could potentially try and see if you have any impact with players.
Yeah, no, 100%. In like, yeah, those environments are key. But like, I think great point what you said about the club you're at. It is a thing, isn't it, that you need the club to be bought into the process of sports science and trying to push the envelope forward a little bit, because if you are in a department, say you're in a sports science department that is just trying to keep your head down a little bit, just get through day to day. Yeah, we've done all what we need to do. We've ticked that box. If anyone comes for me, I can say, no, I've done everything I need to do.
Yeah.
Fair, if that's what you want to be in, absolutely fine. But I think a lot of us, hopefully, are thinking, actually, I'd rather be able to try things. And as long as, I like to think there are, and I know there are clubs out there where maybe the person who fronts up the department, the head of sports science and medicine, whatever it might be, has got backing from the club. And if somebody, a more junior sports scientist, comes, actually, I think this might be a decent idea. I've seen this online. I've maybe read precursors, or I've just got a gut feeling that the players we've got at this point of the season, the way they approach things, the way they move, whatever it might be, this could really benefit them. If that person can then at least give them the time of day to go and explain your rationale. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I like your thinking. Actually, I like your thoughts on that. Let's give it a go. That is a really good environment to work in. That's a brilliant environment, and I think certainly from some of the conversations we had with the West Brom staff, clubs like that, they are really trying to do that. And I know there are others around the country. I'm not going to list them all, and from my experience and things like that, but I would encourage more clubs to try and take that approach, because that's where you're going to get the edge. And I know from full well from experience, we had, Bournemouth, we were trying to do robustness. We called it post-match robustness. After games, we take the flywheels, do some extra work. And we got some really funny looks from other teams at the time, going, why are they bringing literally, flywheel out onto the pitch, final whistle, debrief, hydrate, straight into the post-match robustness, reverse Nordics, and some flywheel squats. And it was like, what? But actually, we found for those players at that time, even starters who played 90 minutes, it gave them a little edge. It got some extra load into them. And that's innovation at the end of the day. That's something which is going to, make those players stronger and better. And sometimes it is, as like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's just gut feeling. I've always been a big advocate. Trust your gut. If you think something might work and you can back it up with some sort of rationale, and you're not just making it up because you saw it on Instagram or YouTube, like, hopefully you're in an environment, if you're working for yourself, if you are leading a program, you are in a better position to try that. But if you can at least have that confidence to go to somebody, your superior, your line manager, and say, I want to try this, and they can give you the time of day, brilliant, 100%. And again, more clubs need to be like that. And that's what these events are all about, aren't they? And sharing those ideas. So hopefully somebody from the West Brom event goes back to their club, says, I saw what they were doing there. Can we try it here? Yes, here we go, and off you go. You're improving players, and that's, at the end of the day, that's the winner chicken dinner, in it. So yeah, really good.
Just to tie on to a point that you made then, which I know might get people a little bit uncomfortable in the seats driving to work or wherever you're listening. Barry mentioned about having an impact as a sports scientist or a strength conditioning coach. And one thing I'd probably question is, you can think about this within your own circumstance or situation. Are you sitting, you just mentioned this, are you sitting in a role and staying comfortable, doing the bare minimum just to tick the boxes and just sort of fall into the background to wear the tracksuit and all the rest of it? Or are you going in trying to make a real change and impact with your players? And I think that there's probably two different things there, isn't there? I get that people are in careers. I get that people have probably got families, they've got different people that they've got to finance and stay in positions and not put jobs at risk. I completely understand that. And that ties in with what we just mentioned about, you can't be in a position and put all these crazy innovations in place where someone turns around and goes, what is this guy doing? Or what is this girl doing? We're just going to get someone else in that's going to sort of fall in line a little bit more. I understand that. But that question, where do you fit? I'm not asking you, but where do you fit? Because I think that's really important. And that's what Barry was talking about. Us as a whole industry have got to ask ourselves that question. There's a lot of factors that go into it now in terms of profiling, testing, data, research in general. Like, all these things are feeding into what we do on a day-to-day basis. What is the actual impact we're having with players? That's just a little insight. Hopefully we're going to get Barry on the podcast and we'll ask him in a bit more detail around this topic, because I think he's going to have some really interesting ideas around this too.
Yeah, and I think his words were, are we harming or helping, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And he was talking about, like, sometimes when you actually break down the contact points per day that we as sports scientists, S&C coaches, physios, nutritionists, we have with players, we're almost like man marking some players.
Yeah.
And it's like, now are we actually getting into the realm where, you're actually starting to harm them because you're like, oh, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, you've said that, so you can't do that now. No, are you eating this right? Where are you going now? Are you going off to the gym? Why are you going off to the gym? You should have done that earlier. And it's like, hang on a minute, bigger picture again. Like, that player's going, will you back off?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you just broken that connection with, the S&C coach, sports scientists, because players are just feeling too, man-marked at times. So yeah, it's I think we asked that question, didn't we, at the end as well? And one of the networking tasks that we asked to kind of finish it off was, we said we put 4 clubs on the wall, didn't we? what was it, Ajax, Bayern, Barcelona, and a club from Manchester that plays in red. We said they're global brands. Everyone kind of knows who they are, knows a little bit about them, knows their style of football and all that sort of jazz. And I said, right, football manager time. Like, you're creating your own club, you're creating your own culture. You want to kind of create your own way of football, but also a way of you develop players and all that sort of stuff. What are the key things you're getting in first? What are the most important things you said? And basically everyone said the same thing around communication, clear lines of communication. We're creating a positive culture, a positive environment that players feel wanted and staff feel wanted and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, you go, yeah, 100% agree with that. So then go back to Barry's point. If you go in, if we're actually, are we doing more harm or are we helping? Which one are we doing? Are we man marking players? Are we, you know, getting that hydration? We're getting to, you know, win a cup first thing in the morning, and then, you know, straight after that, we're giving them to drink this, eat that, do this, be here, be there, pre-activation, go there, right, warm up. No, you know, you've hit certain numbers on the GPS, you're done now. You know, all of that all those points now, and many touch points throughout the day, like you said. Is that making players feel wanted, or is it that making them feel like they just have no freedom or room to breathe? You know, and what's the most important thing? But I think ultimately it boiled down to like just communicate and like, you know, how are you getting on with players. So that was the most important thing, really. But really, really, yeah, positive point.
Awesome, mate. We've actually done pretty well there. For having no plan, we've spoke nonsense for 45 minutes. Just hopefully people take a bit of value from. Anything else to wrap up?
No, I think that was really. I think that was it, really. But there's a lot more we could have said. The big thing was that obviously those events are crucial. Now, the good thing was the live stream worked. That was a good thing.
Yeah, that was
the
a
live
success.
Stream worked in West Brom. We had some of our community members on the WhatsApp page watching that, which was fantastic. You know, you don't have to come to the events. Obviously, you get way more from coming to the events, but you know, doubling on next one. You know, if you can get there, amazing. If you can live stream it and watch it on the community WhatsApp group, then that's an option as well. And going forward, I know speaking to a lot of practitioners, that's a big plus for them. You know, they can be around the world and still watch from these events. So really, really positive. That was that was a real plus for us. I think that's worked. And to be honest, keep trying to get to these events, because, you know, some of the quality of these presentations, they always have been very good, but lately they've been outstanding. So if you can get there, I would always advise that.
What I would just finally say is a thanks to one of our members, because we got a couple of bits of feedback from one of the members, and one of it was about live streaming. And I think it's so important. Like, if any members are listening and you think this is a bit of feedback I could send over, we're always open for feedback and ways of improving what we do. And that is something that we probably toyed with in terms of an idea in the past. And the fact that we now can put that in place, it's a big thank you to people for reaching out. So if there is anything that people think of, then let us know, because we're always looking to improve the community, not just the content that's on there, but in terms of how it's presented, and the value that comes with it as well.
Yeah,
we've got over 150 hours of content on there now, which is pretty crazy, and it's building all the time. I don't even know how many presentations, webinars, I've lost count. That goes way back as well. So what I would probably say is if anyone's joined recently for some of the recent presentations, our actual editing skills and presentations in terms of how it looked will probably be a lot better on the more recent ones, but go back and watch some of the older ones as well.
Yeah,
because there's some brilliant presentations on there from quite a while ago too, from brilliant practitioners. So if you've not been back recently, scroll through and have a look at some of the older presentations too, because there's some really top ones on there.
Yeah, 100%.
Classmate, well, thanks for coming on.
No worries.
I'm hoping that we can get a few more episodes in over the next few weeks with you as co-host, which will hopefully confirm soon, so you can fire some questions at a few guests. But I appreciate it.
No, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Top man. Thanks, Jordan.
Speak soon.